I never thought I'd find myself in the middle of a federal case over something as ordinary as mail. I'm not the type who looks for drama, and I certainly never asked for conflict with my neighbors. But life has a way of dragging you into things when you least expect it, and that's exactly what happened the day my mail started disappearing, and my nosy, self-important HOA neighbor decided to make me her personal target. My name is Richard. I'm 62, retired from 38 years of teaching history at a public high school. My wife, Linda, and I bought a modest but comfortable house in a suburban neighborhood outside Dallas. After years of hard work, we wanted peace. We wanted evenings on the porch, quiet mornings with coffee, and maybe the occasional barbecue with friends. I didn't think I'd be spending retirement dealing with an HOA tyrant who thought she ran the world. Her name was Marlene, though everyone in the neighborhood just called her Karen behind her back. And she was the type of person who lived for control. She wasn't the HOA president, but she might as well have been. She attended every meeting, raised her hand for every vote, and stood at the corner of her yard like a sentry, watching who left their trash can out too long or whose grass grew a half-inch higher than the rules allowed. She was a widow, a few years younger than me, and for what I gathered, she filled her lonely days with gossip and meddling. I tried to be polite with her at first. I waved, said hello, even brought her cookies when Linda baked. But nothing was ever enough. One time she complained that my American flag wasn't aligned properly with HOA standards. Another time she left a passive-aggressive note because my garden hose was visible from the street. It was always something. But the real trouble began when my mail started to go missing. At first, I didn't notice. A bill here, a magazine there. Maybe it got lost in the shuffle, I thought. But then I stopped receiving important letters, bank statements, insurance information, even my pension paperwork. That's when the unease crept in. The mailbox at the end of my driveway became a source of anxiety. I'd walk out each afternoon, heart tight in my chest, wondering if I'd find anything at all. One afternoon, I caught sight of Marlene standing just a little too close to my box. I was sitting inside by the window, sipping iced tea. She had this way of pretending to check her own mail while glancing at mine, her eyes darting around like a kid stealing cookies from a jar. I watched her shuffle something in her hand and walk briskly back to her house. My gut told me what had happened, but my mind refused to believe it. Surely, no one would stoop so low as to steal a neighbor's mail. That wasn't just petty, it was a federal crime. I mentioned it to Linda, who gave me a skeptical look. "You think Marlene is stealing your mail?" "Richard, she's nosy, but stealing? That's serious." "I know it sounds crazy," I told her, "but I'm telling you I saw her. And it explains why all these letters keep vanishing." We decided to test it. The next day, I ordered something small, an old history book from eBay. I tracked it closely. The day the tracking said delivered, I went out to check. Nothing. My heart sank, and I looked over at Marlene's driveway. Sure enough, her garage door closed just as I glanced. That was the breaking point. It wasn't about the book or the bills anymore. It was about dignity, about someone violating my home and my privacy. I went to the local post office and asked to speak with someone about suspected mail theft. To my surprise, they took me seriously. The clerk referred me to the Postal Inspection Service, the federal law enforcement branch that deals with mail-related crimes. A few days later, a tall, no-nonsense inspector named Johnson came to my house. He was calm, professional, and sharp-eyed. He sat across from me at the dining table while Linda poured coffee. "So, you think your neighbor has been stealing your mail?" he asked. "I don't think," I said firmly. "I know. I've seen her." He nodded slowly. "You'd be surprised how often this happens. Sometimes it's identity theft. Sometimes it's revenge. Sometimes it's just nosiness gone too far. Either way, it's a crime. What can we do about it?" I asked. "We'll set up a controlled delivery," he said. "Basically, we'll put a piece of test mail in your box, something traceable, sometimes even with a small GPS tracker inside. If she takes it, we'll have her." I'll admit, I felt a mix of emotions. Relief that someone was taking action, fear of confrontation, and a strange sadness too, because even though Marlene was difficult, she was still my neighbor. She had no idea she was about to step into a trap of her own making. The plan was set for the following week. Inspector Johnson placed a bright red envelope in my mailbox, marked with my name. Inside was a simple decoy, nothing of value, just enough to trigger federal charges if stolen. I sat by the window that afternoon, heart pounding like I was a kid waiting to catch Santa Claus. Sure enough, Marlene appeared. She looked around, glancing up and down the street. Then, quick as a flash, she reached into my box, slipped out the red envelope, and tucked it under her sweater. My stomach flipped. She didn't just do it. She did it without hesitation, like she'd done it 100 times before. Within seconds, 2 unmarked cars pulled up. Inspector Johnson and another officer stepped out, badges flashing. They approached her calmly, but firmly. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the shock on her face when they identified themselves. Her hands shook as they pulled the envelope from her sweater. Her mouth moved quickly, excuses probably or denials, but it was too late. They escorted her back to her house, where they searched for more stolen mail. Later, Johnson told me they found a stack of letters, some of mine, some from other neighbors. Dozens of them. Bills, packages, even greeting cards. It was like she couldn't resist snooping into everyone's lives. When they drove her away, I stood in my driveway, feeling a storm of emotions. Vindication, yes, but also pity. What kind of emptiness must drive a person to do something so reckless, so cruel? The neighborhood buzzed for weeks afterward. Some people were furious. She'd stolen their birthday cards, checks, even medications. Others shook their heads in disbelief, saying, she always seemed controlling, but this? For me, it was a strange kind of closure. I finally understood that sometimes standing up for yourself isn't just about you. It's about protecting everyone around you. Months later, I ran into Inspector Johnson again. He told me Marlene had pleaded guilty and was serving time, though not a long sentence, given her age and lack of a prior record. Still, she now had a federal conviction. I thought about her often after that, about how a life spent nitpicking others had left her so lonely and bitter that she had to peek into their mailboxes just to feel connected. And I thought about my own life, too, the importance of gratitude, of minding your own business, of treating others' privacy with respect. That whole ordeal taught me something I never expected in retirement. Peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict at all costs. Sometimes, peace comes from standing up when someone crosses the line, no matter how small the violation seems. Because small violations add up. They eat at your dignity, your trust, your sense of safety. Linda and I still live in that house. I still get the mail every day, though now it feels like a quiet victory each time I open the box and see it full. The flag waves in the breeze, the hose sits coiled in plain sight, and I don't care if it offends anyone. I've earned the right to live freely, and no HOA Karen will ever take that from me again. And if there's one lesson I'd pass on to anyone listening, it's this. Don't let fear of rocking the boat stop you from defending what's right. Whether you're 62, 32, or 92, your voice matters. Your dignity matters. And sometimes, standing tall means calling in the postal inspector and letting justice take its course.